So all three of those models projecting the Conservatives to be under 130 seats, worst result in the history of the Conservative Party.
So last time we do this before the polls open, welcome to Luke Tryl from More in Common for our look at, digest, analysis of all these opinion polls, which have been coming as if from an open tap today. Hello to you, Luke.
Good evening, John.
Always welcome, especially today, but especially today. So look, that little flood of polls we've been seeing today, especially those detailed mega polls, Luke, what are the big standout points that you take away as you look at them with your computer-like eye?
Well, we've had three more today of those MRP polls, which allow you to make individual constituency projections. And I think my top line takeaway is that all three of them are catastrophic for the Conservatives and suggest we are heading towards a record-breaking Labour majority.
Yeah.
So just to take you through some of the totals, in More in Common's MRP, that was ours. We had the Conservatives on 126, Labour on 430. YouGov, very similar on Labour, 431, but the Conservatives on 102 there. Focal data, Labour on 444, the Conservatives on just 108.
Yeah.
So all three of those models projecting the Conservatives to be under 130 seats, worst result in the history of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, we just got to say wow when you see polling results like that. I mean, there's a range in what different pollsters say the next House of Commons might actually look like. One of your fellow pollsters, I think it was Savanta, gave it a 99% chance that the scale of a Labour win, when and if that Labour win is declared, would be as big or bigger than Labour's landslide in 1997. A 99% chance. Would you stick your neck out that far and say it is that just about as good as certain, Luke?
I might go slightly lower to the sort of 80% or so. I mean, our projected range is slightly different to that one from Salvation. The Salvation one has the Conservatives, right down in the 60s, but I should say is done by a very experienced team who've got a lot of track record in doing this. So I would take it very seriously.
Yeah.
But I think, it is certainly more likely than not now that we are in territory which is beyond 1997.
Where's your corridor of certainty, to borrow a phrase from the great Jeff Boycott? Where would you be prepared to hang your hat by way of a firm prediction on the size of the results?
Well, look, I think, what was interesting in our MRP, and I think YouGov and Focal Data did similar today, was look at, there are a number of seats where even though we've made projections, they're within 2% or within 5%. And the truth is that type of seat could go anywhere. And so what we've said on the Conservative range, looking at that, is at the very high, if all of the marginals break for the Conservatives, they'd be on about 170. If all of them break against the Conservatives, they'd be on sort of 75 seats. So that, I think, is the upper and lower end of where I would put what looks like, a bad night on any level for the Conservatives.
Right. Let's look at what's going through the mind of the voters. There's some pretty strong evidence and very strong numbers, Luke, that say that what most people are thinking about is they just want to change. They just want to kick out the present government. I'm looking at some numbers here. The desire for change has increased over the course of the campaign from 70, which is pretty high, up to 74. But the view that Keir Starmer and Labour represent change, well, that's down from 51 to 45, so fewer than half. So, different people will have different views and different degrees of strength. However, it's for a lot of people, it's more about changing things than buying into or embracing or loving what they be buying and taking after the election.
Oh, absolutely. And if there's one thing that comes out of, both that polling, but also the focus groups we've been done, is a real sort of paradox, actually, that the country is genuinely desperate for change. It comes up all the time in conversations with voters, this feeling that the country is broken, everything's just too difficult, nothing works. They want it to get better. And yet at the same time, a lack of faith that whoever wins the election will actually be able to make a meaningful difference. And a sense that, the sort of median quote I get in a focus group is, well, we may as well roll the dice on this lot because at least they're not the ones who are in power now.
Yes.
And I think that means, that when we're hopefully talking about polls when Labour are in government, the big challenge for Labour is going to be how do they meet those public expectations of change, and how do they do it quickly? Because, I think it's fair to say even the most generous Labour strategist would say that whilst, Keir Starmer has changed opinions of the Labour Party, he has been more the beneficiary of Conservatives losing popularity.
Yes.
Great wave of love for the Labour Party.
It's that old dictum that governments lose elections more than oppositions win them. And when we get to the night itself, we're going to be looking for the big scalps to be taken, the big names to fall. We talked about cabinet ministers on some of these polls. These are forecasts falling like 9 pence. Then there are other stories like Jeremy Corbin and Islington North. We're going to be watching that one. That's an interesting human and political story. Luke, what's the latest on that? I think there's a suggestion he could hang on in there against Labour.
Yeah, so in our MRP, we have Jeremy Corbyn leading. I should give heavy pollsters warning and caveat that specific local factors, it's quite difficult for these polls. I think YouGov have him just narrowly behind. So, if you look at those two, it basically suggests there is still a race there. So that's, a particularly interesting one. And as you say, all of those cabinet ministers, we in fact today had to almost create an extra section of the website for the number of cabinet ministers who were at risk, because it's at 15. 15 potential, as they become known, Portillo moments that could take place tomorrow evening.
Right. Now, beginning a little bit of a postmortem now, but asking, because you have asked, what do people make about the Prime Minister's time in office as well as his campaign? And you've got some interesting findings there, just very briefly.
Yeah, so we've been asking people, what was Rishi Sunak's best achievement? And top of the list, probably won't surprise you, was furlough, the energy cap, and overseeing inflation coming down. Also, it made me chuckle that banning XL bully dogs was actually in number 6. Quite a few people noticed that. What were his worst mistakes there? Number 1, and overwhelmingly so, was failure to reduce waiting lists